the question is probably not so much of how much money you need, but what are you retiring to? Instead of I'm retiring with, what am I retiring to, and what does that actually mean?
If I'm Chris the fireman for the last 30 years, and now I'm just Chris, and I don't know who Chris is or what he likes to do or how he likes to spend time, it's really easy to feel very unfulfilled. I don't know if you've heard the term like gray divorce. You're seeing that more and more where people are getting to that age and going, life is too short. This person is, we're just going in very different directions. We've been in very different places for so long, but work has masked that. The accumulation of those choices was leading me to a negative place, and I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy with the way that I felt, I looked, how I communicated with other people. And it wasn't like I turned my life upside down. It was just like little by little, like, okay, I started to open my life up to God and allow God to kind of direct my life instead of me directing it.
Today's episode is about retirement, but probably not in the way you expect. See, most men spend decades working, providing, meeting deadlines, and building their life for their families. Then one day, the job ends. The paycheck may have been planned for, but the loss of routine, identity, responsibility, and direction often has not. My guest today is Chris Maduri. Chris has spent nearly 2 decades helping people prepare for retirement. After beginning his career shortly before the 2008 financial crisis, he developed an approach centered on a predictable income, risk management, and plans that stand up when conditions are less than perfect. But Chris also believes that retirement planning has to go beyond money. It should address your marriage, your health, relationships, purpose, and the question every man eventually has to answer: what are you retiring to? Today, we're talking about fatherhood, provision, presence, identity, and how a man can prepare for the fourth quarter of life.
Don't move. Keep it locked. You already know. You're listening to the Fit Fatherhood Podcast. And we're having conversations with dope dads covering the 4 pillars of fatherhood. We call it the Fit Fatherhood Formula: faith, family, finance, and fitness. That's right. These dads are setting the pace in business and fatherhood. This show isn't only about the outside success. We're getting down to who you are. Gentlemen, it's time to get fit. And now, let's get into the show.
All right, welcome back to the Fit Fatherhood Podcast, a podcast for fathers by fathers, where we talk about the 4 pillars of fatherhood, which are faith, family, finance, and fitness. And I'm excited to have a guest with me again today. We're going to be talking about fatherhood, obviously, but there's some talks about later stage fatherhood, what we call like maybe fourth quarter fatherhood, that we'll get into. My guest today is Chris Maduri. Chris, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. As I said to you pre-pod, it's getting warmer in here, and the guys who have listened to the podcast know what I'm talking about. It is heating up. It's Southern California. I think when I looked last, it was already 80. And it's looking to be in the high 90s today. So it's going to be a hot one in here, and it just is what it is.
Well, you stay cool in there, and we'll, if you need to stop,
Yeah, I'll be all right. What I'm concerned about is I promised my daughters we're going to go to the park because my oldest daughter has a softball tournament this week. I was like, all right, we'll go to the park and we'll do some hitting and some fielding stuff. And I'm like, man, it's hot in here. That means it's hot out there. So I'm going to be out there sweating no matter what.
My daughter had softball last night, so
okay,
we're right in the thick of it there. How old is your daughter?
So my oldest is 13. She'll be 14 in 2 weeks. And then my youngest is 11. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. We got 2 almost the same age. I got a 15 and a 10. So we're right behind you.
Yeah. So let's, for the guys that haven't heard of you before or don't know who you are, would you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I am born and raised in Connecticut, grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, living in Darien now, and have 4 beautiful children and a beautiful wife, I would say in their ages. So I got 15, 14, a 10, and an 8. And it's just been such a blessing to be able to parent them and, play a instrumental role in their lives. And, during the day, I am a retirement planner, financial planner, and try to work with people on preparing for retirement, mostly not only from a financial standpoint, but also the spiritual, the emotional, and really trying to find purpose in retirement. So it's been a blessed, beautiful life here.
Yeah, awesome. So I think I got this. So you got 2 boys and 2 girls? Is that what we're looking? Yeah. How is that, right? Because I only have two girls. My friends, for the most part, either have like only girls or only boys. I think I have one friend that has a mixture. What is it like when you have, both in the house? Like how, because I know for me, I'm definitely a different person now that I have daughters, right? Like it definitely
Sure.
changed me. And I can imagine your daughters had that effect on you, but you're also raising sons. How do you kind of navigate being both of those fathers? Like, or maybe, you know what? Maybe not even being both those fathers. You probably have to be four fathers because you're a different father for each kid.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Every child's different. What every child needs is going to be different. I'm a twin and my wife's a twin as well. And, I have an identical brother and it's like we look alike, but we're two unique personalities. And I think that's one of the interesting, I don't want to say mistakes that parents make, but we're always so worried about, I don't know if you grew up hearing the expression like even Steven and making sure that everyone kind of gets the same, but everyone's needs are different. And so really just trying to understand their personalities, making sure that they're heard and listened and valued in their own way. And yeah, the boys are a little bit different than girls. I think the biggest, and someone had said recently, they're like, for boys, having self-control is almost more important than having self-worth in a way. And you kind of experience that because it's like you're wrangling an animal at times. With my youngest in particular, I'm like, why are you climbing the street sign to our road? And he's 8 and he's just like such a wonderful light, but is someone that has like anxiety and is constantly concerned with what people are thinking of me. And I'm like, you just have no shame, my friend. Like, you're going to go pee in our front yard right now. So it's a little bit different, but at the end of the day, each child, I think, has their own set of needs, and we try to, address them as best we can.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think I've heard kind of similarly, but I think with girls, there's a more of an interest in building their self-worth, just society wise, right? Like because girls tend to be scrutinized a little bit more about themselves, right? Like who they are, how they look, that kind of stuff, right? Whereas boys, nah, they don't really care. Not for a long time, right? Not until they start caring about girls, right? For a long time, they don't care. They roll around in the dirt. They don't want to take baths. They don't want to take shower. Like they don't care what they look like. They don't care what people think about them. They just want to have fun. Whereas girls are like, a little bit more concerned about that stuff. And so I think I know what I've noticed for me is like I do have to kind of affirm them and build them up and their self-worth up to a certain point was somewhat based on what me and my wife kind of affirmed in them, right? Like
Yeah.
our thoughts on their identity kind of gave them their identity or kind of positioned them to embrace a certain identity about themselves. And I think with boys, you're right, self-control probably is a little bit more important is because I was a little boy at one point and I just did whatever I wanted to do. Whatever I thought was fun, I was just going to do it. And that can definitely get you in trouble if you don't have any self-control.
Yeah. Yeah, you see it. I had coached my son in football this year, and I'm used to coaching my daughter and the girls, and they listen or at least pretend to listen. You're coaching 8-year-old boys and there's like nothing. And I'm going, all right, I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to yell. And you start to get louder and louder. I'm like, well, by the 13th time you said something, if you're just escalating your tone a little bit, it's going to get pretty loud. It's like
Yeah.
they just don't have the ability to like sit still and to take anything seriously. And part of that's beautiful, but it is incredibly frustrating, at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you make such a good point with the girls and affirming them. They have to be built up in a different way, and
Hmm.
it, it's tough because you want to be like, it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter, but it's important to them,
Hmm.
and you're kind of striking that balance between knowing that your worth comes from God, and it's not based on what you do; it's based on who you are.
Yeah.
And making sure that that foundation is built, but also taking an interest and not like dismissing the fact that Yeah, they want to get their hair done. They want to do their nails. They want to look pretty. They want to do all of these things and encouraging that as well, because it's important. If it makes you feel good, as long as it's for the right reasons, then I want to support that and I want to make you feel good. And I like a good pedicure too. So it works out well.
Yeah, my daughters have been trying to get me to get my like paint my nails their entire lives. And not that I don't think anything of it. I just don't want my nails painted. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've got friends that have done it with their daughters. I'm like, look, I'll go with you. I'll get the pedicure. I'm not getting the clear polish. I'll get them buffed. Cool, right? Like the whole experience of getting pampered is amazing. I just don't, because after this moment where we leave the shop and I have my nails painted. Now I've got to have them painted for like the next week and a half, you know? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't know. That's just not, I nothing against it. It's just not me personally, but they love it. They love all the stuff. Especially now, as my youngest is going into sixth grade, my oldest is going into high school. They are fully leaning into being teenager and tweenager of like wanting to do lip gloss and make sure their hair is done. And when we need to leave the house now, it takes forever because they got to get their hair just right. They got to get they're asking each other, how does this look? And they're trying stuff on. And I remember when they were little, it was just like whatever we put on the bed, that's what they put on, and that was it. And we were gone. And now it's like a whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how it changes. And it feels like it's overnight,
Yeah.
that someone was just like a little girl. And then you're like, shoot, like my daughter's got a boyfriend now. Like, and it's an adjustment and he's wonderful, and you're happy for them and you try to pace it. And at the same time, like you want them to be able to talk to you, right? Because you feel like if you don't establish communication early on, you're not going to do that when they're 16 years old, right? So, and you want them to be comfortable talking to you and knowing that you're not there to just either dismiss it or to tell them what they're doing wrong, to really listen, to what they have to say and to, just have an open dialogue. Because if you're just cutting it down, they're just going to close up on you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think what I've noticed is in any conversations that are just already awkward, if you don't have established communication, they become unbearable, right? Like it's just, what are we talking about? Why are we doing this? She doesn't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Let's leave it alone. So we try to have like these conversations as often as possible. Is one thing I've always told guys, and this is something I learned from my dad. Is more husband and wife relationship, but he used to tell me, you want to talk about war in times of peace, like the way you're going to handle things that are uncomfortable. You want to have those conversations before they happen, because in the midst of it, neither one of you are going to say the thing that you really want to say. And so how you handle things is important to talk about when everything is going well, right? And honestly,
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about conflict when we're not having conflict, but it definitely helps. And so what I've tried with my daughters is, like I said, we were just on vacation and we've had the kind of birds and bees talk before, but now she's going into high school. There's going to be older boys who are deeper into that and more attracted to girls, and that whole thing is going to be elevated exponentially,
Yeah.
right? Because I was a high school boy. Me and her mom have been together since I was a sophomore and she was a freshman. So I'm like, I
Wow.
know what that's like, and I know it's coming. So we got to have these conversations. And it was really smooth, right? Because it wasn't the first time we ever talked about it. It wasn't the first time we ever had an uncomfortable conversation. And it was like, she just sat down and we just talked. And then we just kind of went back and forth until the conversation ran out, and it wasn't weird at all. And I felt good and she seemed to feel good. And I was like, all right, cool. But I was like, hey, we're going to come back to this. Like, this wasn't the end of it. We're going to talk about this again, but I'm glad we had this conversation. And she was like, me too. I'm like, all right, yes. All right.
Wow.
It worked so far. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I feel like I have to practice a face of not reacting to what they say and not judging it. But it can definitely be awkward. And the more awkward we make it, the less likely they are to come back. So, kudos to you for,
Yeah.
proactively like seeking out that conversation and not, trying to shy away from it. And because they're tough topics. And I mean, we live in the information age. So they're going to get the information one way or another. If we want to be able to shape it and, present it in a balanced way in both sides, and, just to help them to understand, like, you are going to make your own choices in life. And really, life is just a series of choices, right? Those choices are going to present other ones and other ones, and so on and so forth. So, the more thoughtful you are about what what those choices mean and stuff, your options are just going to be different, right? If you choose to spend your time, really cracking the books, then you're going to have different options for colleges and work and things like that. So yeah, sorry, I'm rambling.
No, no, no. That's all good stuff in that Kings, because I think obviously I'm there, right? And so hearing you say that is like, okay, we're on the same page. And I don't know what it's gonna look like for my youngest, because my oldest daughter, she is, as much as she cares about dressing, she so far doesn't seem to care about boys. My like, she's like, all these boys, their term for boys that are not cute is chopped. The boys are chopped, or they're immature, or the boys are like, they get on my nerves. Like, all the boys get on her nerves, right?
Yeah.
But my youngest daughter is like, "Oh, I like him." Like, she's 11 years old, and she's like, "I really like this boy." And again, we have these conversations, and it's not awkward. It doesn't feel weird. At the same time, I'm like, "Little crusty 11-year-old man, don't like that kid." I went to field day. I saw that kid. He sucks. Like, um, but again, just being able to have the conversation makes it okay. And I think she's the one I'm probably gonna have to think more about when it comes in terms of boys and relationships than my older daughter. However, who knows, right? Like, it can instantly flip. And I think just being able to have the uncomfortable conversation and knowing, like you said, not like making the choice for them, but kind of helping them frame it, helping them understand the context around it, understanding that this choice leads to another choice is extremely important, not only in, puberty and boys, but just in life in general, beyond their time with us, even as they're adults, right? The choices they make at 20 will reflect it when they're 30 or 40. And so that kind of teaching those lessons now is extremely important, especially when they're transitioning through, being a kid to being an adolescent to, being a young adult. I think our roles as fathers change. And so the conversations we have with them has to change. And so what you're saying is right on.
Yeah. Yeah. And trying to get them to like not judge and kind of let go of them, understanding that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have regrets with the choices that you make. Take what serves, right? Get the lesson out of it and try to let the rest go, because otherwise, it's very easy to hold on to shame
Mhm.
and, to feel like, I'm always messing up, and, you can kind of create an identity out of those things. And, with friendships and stuff like that, it's these kids, man, it's a tough time right now with social media. There are some positives, but in terms of like finding your tribe, I think it could be a little bit easier because you have the ability to. Whereas, if you grew up in a small town and let's say you're a boy and you don't like sports, we're kind of in that here. It's like, it's tough. Like the arts aren't overly encouraged and things like that. It's very easy to feel like an outsider. So being able to identify with, other kids that have similar interests and things like that is a beautiful thing. Outside of that, everything else is just like a
Yeah.
shitstorm. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Wild West outside of that for sure.
yeah, yeah. How do you handle that, like the social media aspect and stuff with your kids?
So my youngest doesn't have any access to it. I mean, she has YouTube, and that's kind of becoming more social media as they kind of like allow shorts and things like that, but it's still kind of separate. My oldest is she has Instagram account, but she has Instagram teen account. And what we did is we had her do a presentation. She had asked about it a couple of times, but we kind of put it off. We didn't make a big deal about it, but we just kind of put it off, like, hey, when you're ready, we'll allow you to have it. And she kept kind of bugging us, coming back to us more frequently. And then finally she was like, I want it. I was like, all right, cool. Put together a presentation on why it's important for you to have it. And
Love
then
it.
when you're ready, you sit us down. And if you're convincing enough, we'll allow it. in the background, I've been working with Meta for the last couple of years on their Instagram teen accounts, and kind of understanding what restrictions there are, and kind of like how the whole account situation works. So I already knew that, like, I was based on what I knew about what they allow, and kind of the ratings and the levels of protection and security and parent levels of ability to kind of see what your kid is doing. I had already become comfortable with it. I just wasn't going to be like, yeah, you can have it. Like, by all means, the longer we can hold off, the better. And if you don't want to push for it, I'm not going to give it to you for no reason.
Yeah.
But then finally, last year, right before her 8th grade year started, she was like, okay, I think I'm ready. I'm going to do a presentation, and I want you and mommy to sit down. And she did it, and it was convincing. The funny part about it is for the first, I don't want to say 6 to 8 months, she barely used, because I can see her account and I can see how much time she uses, because she only gets an hour. At that time, she's only getting an hour a day. She was using like 7 minutes on average for like the first 6 months. Like, she was not on at all. She did all the presentations to get on it, and she barely even uses it. But now she's using it a little bit more in the summer because she's not at school and she's trying to connect with her friends and all that kind of stuff. But she's still not going over her limit of time. She's still off of it. By 9 o'clock is when it shuts off. She can't get access to it. She's posting pictures of, stuff that we're doing. It's pretty cool. I mean, like, as far as the restrictions go, they kind of set it up where it's like movies, right? So R-rated movies, TVMA, TV-13 or whatever, PG-13. So depending on a child's age, they're kind of slotted into those ranks. And so she has a PG-13 account. So if she can watch something PG-13, the stuff that she sees on Instagram is PG-13. So I'm not super concerned about it. I definitely wouldn't let her have a TikTok, because that's literally the Wild West.
Yeah.
And it could be anything. X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, is the same way. She would never be caught dead with the Facebook, so I don't have to worry about that. Facebook is for
It's
old
right next to her
people.
MySpace account.
Right. Yeah. She's like, Grandma Mimi's on Facebook. I never do Facebook. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right. So Instagram is the only one. And like I said, I feel pretty comfortable because I can monitor what she's doing. I can't see the actual messages, but I can see who she's messaging. I can see who she's friended or who's friending her. I can see basically how like you can see on your For You page kind of what content is kind of typically the stuff that you look at. I can see that for her, the topics that she's kind of constantly looking at. And I feel pretty comfortable about it. So it definitely was something I was concerned about, though, because she has had friends who've had phones since like the 3rd and 4th grade. And so, it took us 5 years to allow her to get onto it. And so I was definitely concerned for a while about, trying to make sure that she was going to be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's probably one of the biggest parenting decisions that we, have to make these days. In our town, they had this movement of wait till 8. And initially I totally misinterpreted that. I'm like, how early are we giving kids phones? We got to wait until they're 8. They actually meant 8th grade, which seems a little bit more appropriate. But, once they get it, it's a different job. You have to monitor it and stay on top of it. And for us, so my older 2 kids are from my first marriage, and they're not with me full time. And then the younger 2 are. So, it's just different in that sense, because you're not the primary, and the older they get, it's like when they were younger, I felt like, I was in the movie. I might have been a character in the movie at some time. Yeah. Then you're like, well, maybe I'm the director. I'm like, now I feel like I'm in the audience, sometimes watching a horror movie going, no, run.
Right. Yeah.
It's, and I have a wonderful relationship, with my ex-wife and her husband. And we were actually just talking before we started recording here, and so grateful for that relationship. But you know how it is. It's like you get together for the regular decisions, but the ins and outs and the day-to-day decisions, you're just not, really a part of. So, when our kids are like, my daughter was like, I'm 10, I get a phone, right? My older daughter got a phone, or she's like, my sister got a phone. Like, different house made that decision. Sorry. So, it's, you try to have balance in everything, but a lot of it's just having faith and trust in, the people that are making the decisions. And, like I said, we're very blessed for that. So I did see that. Sure. No problem.
All right. So I you know what is interesting as our kids continue to get older. I'm starting to think about, my daughters both want to go to college, so we're planning for college and paying for college. But over this last few weeks while we were on vacation, because we vacationed with my wife's cousin and her family, and we're around this, they're about 4 and 5 years older than us, but we're kind of starting to talk about retirement because we all kind of noticed on this trip, they've got a 16-year-old son. Like I said, my daughter's about to be 14. These family trips are starting to kind of run the course, right? Like pretty soon they're going to want to stay home or not go on these long trips with the family. And it's going to be just us. And that got us thinking about retirement. When the kids are out of the house, it's going to be just us. And I've got this idea, my wife and I, of being digital nomads. When our youngest is gone to college, that first year she's gone, we're going to take like 6 months and we're just going to go travel the world, right? And like go see all the stuff that we haven't gotten to see. And then we'll come back and settle down somewhere, not in this house because we don't need all this space anymore. And just thinking about what that looks like for us. So we've obviously started talking about it, but the conversation typically, other than like desirable locations, the conversation typically hinges on money and how much money you need.
Sure.
And I know from kind of looking at some of your stuff, the question is probably not so much of how much money you need, but like kind of what are you retiring to? Like, instead of I'm retiring with, what am I retiring to? And what does that actually mean? Why do you think that's like a question that someone needs to answer first?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the lifestyle that you want to have in retirement. And that's going to mean from a financial standpoint, but also just from a life standpoint, right? Because so much of our life and so much of our purpose and our identity has come from our work life. And you know what you're doing every day, right? The decisions that you make. And there's a lot of stuff that's almost on autopilot. And so once you retire, filling that time, you pull away someone's identity, right? If someone, let's say, was a fireman, right? If I'm Chris the fireman for the last 30 years, and now I'm just Chris, and I don't know who Chris is or what he likes to do or how he likes to spend time, it's really easy to feel very unfulfilled.
Yeah.
You kind of have that initial time where you're like, okay, I want to travel, or, I just want to relax, or whatever it is that you want to do. But after that, you can't travel forever. Most of us don't have the means to do that.
Right. Right.
Or to distract ourselves with purchases or, things like that. So it's really important that we figure out how we're going to find fulfillment in retirement so that, we've waited our entire lives to have the freedom to pursue our passions. But when we're on that treadmill of life, it's very easy to not be passionate about anything.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't have the time to do it. So just figuring out how that time's going to be filled and how you're going to find, how you're going to fund that is, I think two of the keys to having a successful retirement.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because my grandfather retired from the military, and shortly after his retirement, he became a correctional officer and then retired from that and did that until he could retire again. My dad 2 years ago retired. And then it took him all of 6 months before he was like, you know what, I'm going back. And so he's back working again. He works a adjusted schedule. He doesn't work like he used to work, but he went back because him and my uncle, they run group homes in the Bay Area. So they only have 2, but at one point they had as many as 5. And so my dad was like, all right, I did 30 years there. I'm done. I'm just going to retire. And me and your mom are just going to just do whatever. And he fixed the fence. He fixed some stuff around the house. He did some gardening. And before I knew it, he was like, I'm going to work today. And I was like, huh? What are you talking about? And so he's been working like 3 days a week when kind of he feels like it, but he's working, right? Because that's who he is. That's who I've always known. My dad has always worked. And that's one of the things that I've learned from him is how to work and work hard. Yeah. And I know that becomes your identity. Like a lot of times when people ask you about yourself, the first thing you say is what you do. Right. And like you mentioned, a firefighter, I'm pretty sure every firefighter is going to mention that they're a firefighter first.
Yeah.
Obviously, I may say husband or father or something like that, but it's name and occupation. It's typically how we identify ourselves. And looking forward to retirement, that is one of the things I'm concerned about because I don't like gardening. I'm not going to be out in the yard gardening. I'm not going to pick up some random hobby like boating or one of those things, I'm not going to be making sourdough, which seems to be a big thing now. I don't know what it is that I'm going to do, but I can imagine that I'm going to have some kind of purpose or calling at that point. I do like what I'm doing now with coaching and working with men and fathers, and I can see that being something I continue to do because I can do it virtually, but I don't want to have the typical, I have to do this thing, right, when I retire. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to, is like the quote unquote freedom of retirement. But a lot of that is not real for most of us, right? Like the freedom that we think we're getting sometimes is not what we expected. Have you seen that to kind of be the case?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what your dad's kind of done is very typical and also really healthy for a lot of people from a financial standpoint, from a mental standpoint, whether it's reshaping it to work on your own terms and, to have the ability to either say no or to create your own schedule and just have the flexibility to find balance in life is an amazing step. And for some people, that is their dream retirement, where they go, all right, well, maybe I'm mentoring someone, or maybe I'm consulting, or whatever it is, or they open up a different kind of business that doesn't have to be about income so much, or I shouldn't say income. It's not, you're measuring success in a different way, right? And it's filling you up and you're excited to do whatever it is that you're doing. That's really what you want. And it doesn't mean that you're going to pick up an instrument or bear with me one second. I'm going to cough, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Thank you. It really is just more about identifying what it is to live life on your own terms and just finding meaning and purpose for that next act. So yeah, long story long, you are seeing that quite a bit where people, they're more comfortable having income, especially because fewer people have pensions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a tremendous fear about running out of money. And, you kind of have grown this nest egg, but you start spending that down. And that's the shift. I think that mental shift in retirement, you go from accumulation to what they call decumulation. And that's both of assets, of things, of, life experiences. And now you're like, okay, well, I'm not accumulating anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, the end is kind of, coming near. So it's like, am I fulfilled? Have I done everything that I wanted to do? And those early years of retirement are important. Those are like the go-go years where you still have the wherewithal to travel and to do a lot of those things and put those pieces in place. Because, when you're 85, 90 years old, no one's like, let me go on a river cruise to the Nile. Like that ship is, literally sailed, I think, for most people.
Yeah. It's funny, man. We went swimming in the ocean, and there was like a cave, and they kind of took us inside the cave, and climbed up on the rocks and all this stuff. And my wife was like, "There's no way I would have done that if I was 60." Because a lot of people wait till they retire to go do these things, right? And then that looks very different when you're older, right? Like some of the things that you want to do when you're young, you got to do when you're young. So I'm thinking about retirement as not like like I'm shutting a door. I kind of want to think of it more like, for me, this is how I'm thinking. It's like a faucet, right? I'm just kind of gradually turning it down and kind of slowing down the stream of work that I'm doing until it's finally off, right? I don't want it to be like, Friday is my last day, and then all of a sudden I'm never working again. And now I'm trying to adjust or scramble to try to figure out what that looks like. I kind of want to start to build the retirement life as I'm getting closer to it. Do you think that's a good idea, or should I just go cold turkey on it?
No,
just rip the Band-Aid off, or what?
Brilliant. No. I think the more you can try it on, the better you're going to feel about it. Right. Like even just taking some time and kind of winding it down a little bit and little by little going, ooh, I like this. If you're going from 5 days a week, some people 7 days a week, cutting it down a little bit. This way you can, just find that balance. You can do the things that you want to do and you're still working. So you're still accumulating, or at least not spending down those assets. So to be able to enjoy life, like you don't need to be retired to do that. I think we have this concept in our head that like I work and then one day I don't work and then I stop. And I think that's unhealthy for a lot of different reasons. And just to be able to, instead of a light switch, if it's, a water faucet or an oven, you just dial it down a little bit and just kind of open things up for more time. You guys, you look like you're really young. So I'm not sure how old are you?
43.
43. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's ideal, right? Like your kids, you get to experience kids and be a part of their life. It's not just, watching from afar. And the idea that you're taking time with your wife to when they go to college, this is time that we're still young and healthy and have the ability to do all of these things and to enjoy each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, let's face it. I know everyone says you put your spouse first, but for most of us, it's our children and our jobs are 1 and 2. And then there's sometimes steeper drop off than others between 2 and 3. And it's both 1 and 2 take up a lot of time and they demand a lot of time. And financially, we all have needs and, trying to provide for the kids and everything. And being young enough where you can still really enjoy your spouse and really reconnect and find those pockets of time is so important, because once the kids are out of the house and retirement comes in, that's a big adjustment for a lot of people. You're I really liked life when I saw you for a couple of hours a day. Now I'm seeing you a lot more.
Yeah.
You just run out of shit to say to each other after a while. Sorry for cursing on the podcast.
No worries. That makes me think about my parents because my mom had to retire before my dad. She had to medically retire. And so she wasn't working. And my entire life, they've been passing ships, right? My dad was working and she was home, or she was working and it was they were never really in the same place at the same time unless there was a reason for them to be. And then she retired, so she's home more. And I haven't had this conversation explicitly with them about this in particular. This is what I'm observing. So she's home, so she's on him a little bit more about retiring so we can spend more time together or whatever. So then he retires, and what I think both of them realize is that they weren't really spending that much time together. You know what I mean? She wants to go and travel. She's originally from Germany, so she wanted to go to Germany. My dad doesn't like to fly. In my lifetime, he would take just the mandatory time off from work. He wouldn't, you know what I mean? This year, this time isn't going to roll over, so we got to take 2 weeks. Okay, I'm taking it. Otherwise, he never takes a day off. He's got to be deathly ill. I mean, he's got to be in the hospital ill to not go to work. And now that, that period of time where they were both retired, it was she wanted to go places. And he was I don't want to go. You can go. No worries. You go. And you and your sisters, or my sisters went with him, with her one time. And she traveled and he stayed home. And I was man, I don't think they ever really had the conversation or realized work was hiding how different they imagined retirement being.
Yeah.
Because they had just been so busy doing the thing, working or raising us or being a part of raising my nieces and nephews and being involved in all of the stuff. And then all of a sudden that stuff stopped and we didn't really need them like that anymore. And they just had each other and it was hey, you're different.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and what are we going to do? Because I want to go and you don't, and I want to do this and you don't. And, now my dad went back to work. And so it's not as much of an issue, but my mom is still your dad is just so stubborn. He don't ever want to do nothing. He don't want to go nowhere. And they're supposed to come down and visit us this year. And my dad has been talking about it. He initiated the conversation. We're going to come down. We're going to spend a couple weeks there. And then when he started back working again, he's well, I'm going to have to set it up so I don't miss time. I'm man, they don't need you there. They did you a favor and let you come back and work with them, man. They'll be okay. You can take a couple weeks. My mom is she can't, right? She can't work. So she's I want to come down, but your dad's got to bring me because she had to have her leg amputated. So she's in a wheelchair. So she's wow. If I'm going to come down, I need somebody to come with me. I can't do this on my own. And so my sisters will probably, one of them anyway, because my other just moved to Alabama. So one of my sisters might accompany her down if my dad can't get out of his own way.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, those conversations are so important, before people retire, because you see that all the time. It's one person's vision for how that time's going to be spent, how that money's going to be spent. may be very different than the other person's. And you're seeing, I don't know if you've heard the term like gray divorce. You're seeing that more and more where people are getting to that age and going, life is too short. This person is, we're just going in very different directions. We've been in very different places for so long, but work has masked that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just, either go at it alone or, whatever the case may be. But I think with a lot of good conversations and finding compromise and communication, like sometimes that's the answer of like, if the person doesn't want to compromise and come, at a minimum, don't stop the other person from doing it, right? From living out their life and their dreams and everything, and to be supportive of it and, to find a way. Hey, it's different because my parents are the opposite. I mean, they have been joined at the hip for the entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a beautiful thing. And I see that and I'm, very envious of that because my wife and I are, also very much like ships in the night. She's got a very demanding job, doesn't have a ton of flexibility in that. And it was actually the beauty of COVID for us was that we were as a family all together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, you know what? I do like you.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. I'm looking forward to, 20 years from now spending time together.
Yeah.
But,
like, hey, let's do this again.
Yeah. Put that, but I think having that conversation of, what that lifestyle is going to look like is, super duper important for folks to have. And that's, you also bring up the other tough part for a lot of families is health, right? And people's health changes at a different time. And generally speaking, like if one person gets sick, it's the other one that becomes the caretaker for them. And having those conversations and really being honest about, where we're at. If somebody's always had like some failing health issues and stuff like that, what it's going to mean. Do we need to have care in place? Because like I'm 47 and if one of us had some issues that look like they were going to present themselves later on, early onset dementia, things like that, it's like, what is that going to look like? Because yeah, you might have a kid living in Alabama. This isn't like when they were growing up when we all, lived in the same village. Generally speaking, the kids aren't close by, and people are waiting longer to have kids. So a lot of people finding themselves in a position where they're taking care of a parent and a child at the same time. So, while we're working, should we be committing funds to some sort of proactive long-term care planning, things like that? All of these are just conversations about, how finances should be best set up to support us later on in life.
Yes, that's awesome. You know what? I kind of want to ask you a little bit about that because, as we're planning for retirement or thinking about retirement at the next stages, I think we typically just think about like, okay, how can we pay our bills? These are the bills we have now. Maybe we downsize and move to a smaller home, but this is kind of what we need to survive or have a comfortable life. But there are other things that come into play, like you mentioned, the long-term care and other things that maybe we don't think about that could cripple us at that point,
Yeah.
Because right around, like you said, right around the age that I'm retiring, if things work out, like my parents are going to be in a point where like they're probably going to need to be taken care of, or they're going to need to be somewhere where they have some care. I'm not talking about like just throwing them in a nursing home and forgetting about them, but they are going to have probably nurses or doctors visits and all these things that are going to need to be taken care of. And I'm trying to go to Thailand. Like we've got different goals at that point. So it's definitely something that we got to think about that maybe I didn't even think about and starting to, because I do have siblings, but I don't know that they're thinking about it. And so that we have to start kind of, at least for my portion, I want to start thinking about that. Is that something that you suggest that others, guys that are starting to plan retirement, like, I guess, what are the things that we should be thinking about in terms of planning our retirement, or like that, like you mentioned, maybe the fourth quarter of life?
Yeah, it's a great point. And, when you think about from a financial standpoint, And going back to that accumulation phase, it was kind of like, all right, I hire a money manager. Their job is to accumulate assets and to grow those assets. And when you start spending them down and you flip over to retirement, it becomes more about making sure that income is taken care of. And then also, what are the risks that I need to mitigate? Right. So if it's long-term care risk, right, they're kind of hand in hand, because the greatest risk of running out of money is generally going to be due to a protracted long-term care event where, somebody's requiring $200,000 a year for care. And those assets are getting drawn down so much faster than the remaining assets are growing back. So there's things and, financial tools that you can put in place, but it's important that you have that conversation with your financial advisor to say, what are we doing from a guarantee standpoint? Right. I got to make sure that the money in the first 5 years of retirement is guaranteed and totally protected from any market loss or interest rate sensitivity or anything like that. Should we be committing a portion of this money to having some sort of long-term care protection put in place? And there's different products that you can, look into, and always encourage people to, please give me a call. We can go over those and talk about the options that are available to them. And that's kind of like how that money's being spent and along that conversation, because you usually see a difference between the man and the woman, right? The man's looking at the returns. The woman's going, I don't want to run out of money.
Yeah.
And how that money's going to be spent is like, what if something happens to us? We'll figure it out, or hope is not a great strategy for when these things happen.
Right.
And usually by the time they're in front of you, you've lost any leverage, right? You go to an insurance company when you're 75 years old and say, hey, I'd like, long-term care policy. You're not getting any leverage on that, right? So if you can, within like the last 5-10 years of your work life, maybe make some commitments to that and say, all right, maybe instead of just, funding the 401k, maybe we fund this plan over here so that we get leverage, 2 times, 3 times what we put in for long-term care that's tax-free. And then if we never use it, hey, it becomes a tax-free benefit for our kids. Like, that's a good use of money. And just having those conversations is, going to be critical, because so much of it, sequence of return risk, right? So basically it's not, if you look at 20 years of returns, you can average the same return throughout that time. But if you have a negative shock in the first 5 years of your retirement, the chances of running out of money are 40% higher than if those negative lapses came much later. You have the same average return, but you had $1 million. Now you only have $600,000 and you're spending that down, so it can't grow back. So, just making sure that where those assets are located and protected is super critical, as you approach retirement. And so, I call it the, retirement red zone or risk zone. The first the 5 years before you retire and the first 5 years of retire have to be really well planned for and thought out. After that, you have a lot more flexibility and a lot more bandwidth, to adjust for it. So.
Okay. So I think a lot of times we talk about retirement, we talk about it as like maybe like a feeling and less of a fact. Like I've been working this job for 25 years. It's time for me to retire, right? Like I feel like I've been working so long. I don't want to work anymore. Next year I'm retiring. What is it that we should probably know before we actually retire? Like what are the things that obviously we have to have some money put aside, but like maybe what is the question that we need to have answered before we retire?
From a financial standpoint, or from, more of a
give it to us all, because I know you have I know you have the emotional and psychological stuff as well, because you've been doing it for a long time, so you understand it deeper than just the money. From a retirement standpoint, making sure that you have enough income to pay your bills, right? Like once that's locked in and guaranteed, you can weather the storms because you're not tapping into it. So make sure that you have enough guaranteed income. And kind of make sure that every person's different. So some people don't like that approach, but for most people that find comfort and peace of mind,
making sure that you have enough income to pay your bills and you can live your life, at least on a baseline level, without going broke. On, the mental and emotional side, really just getting in touch with yourself, what your identity is, what your purpose is, and just kind of spend time with yourself. Like, what are your interests? What is going to make you, pretending that, today's day one, I close my eyes. How am I spending that time? What is going to give me fulfillment in life? And then, from there, just kind of kicking it around, staying open, to different ideas and trying different things. You don't have to go from this rigid life of, here I work, this is what my day is going to look like every day. But just being curious, and exploring different things, because oftentimes it's just saying yes to things that are of interest, things that go, ooh, inside, like, that could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And saying yes to that could take you to a place that you never imagined was going to provide so much fulfillment in that next act of life.
Okay. All right. Cool. I think that answers the for me, right? Like, I know other guys probably have a ton of questions, and obviously I suggest everybody, if you're even thinking about it, if you have a family, if you have kids, you should be planning for your future. If you don't already have a financial advisor or somebody that's helping you plan that, you definitely need to do that. Chris is obviously in that field and a professional there, so we'll have his information available for you. But if a guy's listening right now, and just like any of us, he's working hard, raising children, trying to save, but retirement just feels far away, right? Like I feel like, because I want to get to there, and I just left this vacation and I want to vacation more. I feel like it's like right around the corner. But there's some time. I'm only 43. I got some years ahead of me. I got some time that I've got to put in and set some things up. But for guys that are feeling like, it's just still so far away, what could they be doing today? And you actually kind of just answered this, but I'm asking it again. What could they be doing today, either financially and personally, so that they enter that fourth quarter with their money, their marriage, and their health? And really, I think the underlying thing that we've talked about, that you've kind of come back to a couple times, is their purpose, having all those 3 things or 4 things intact when retirement actually does show up.
Yeah. I think it's really just taking care of yourself, the mental, the emotional, the health, all of these things. We have a tendency to think that we need to do big things, right? Like, oh, when I make more money, I'll put more money away. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, because when you have time, it changes things, right? You have the ability to say, all right, how much income do I need to live? And it's not about accumulating these assets, right? There's different plans that you can put into place that are truly just income oriented, and you can make flexible contributions little by little, keep chipping away. Same thing for health. If you're not in a good, healthy state and you're not taking care of yourself and working out and eating right, making small changes and just choices that lead to life, right? Just put you on a different path. So you don't have to turn your life upside down. It's just little by little, making choices that are in line with the future you and who you want to be, and just spending time and going, I'm not where I want to be right now, but who is that person and what choices does that person make to get there? And you can find that, like, just making slightly better choices every day accumulates. And a couple years later, you're sitting there going, whoa, this is a very different version of the person that I am. That was it for me. Now, I spent most of my 20s and 30s living a life that it led to death. And I don't mean like imminent death, but the choices that you're making are either good for you or they're bad for you, one way or another, and the accumulation of those choices was leading me to a negative place. And I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy with the way that I felt, I looked, how I communicated with other people. And it wasn't like I turned my life upside down. It was just like little by little, like, okay, I started to open my life up to God and allow God to kind of direct my life instead of me directing it. And it led me to a beautiful place. So if I can encourage anybody to, find time with God and, find that life of faith, it's going to lead you to a place that you never imagined you'd be able to get to.
Yeah, man. Listen, we've talked about a lot of different things on this episode, and retirement and fatherhood and being a dad and having conversations with your kids. But fellas, if you made it this far to this point and you heard the answer to that question, that was it right there. Like, I feel like that was what we all need to hear on so many different levels. I think Chris hit the nail on the head, and I don't know that I can add anything to that. Great. That was a great answer.
Thank you.
Listen, Chris, I appreciate this conversation for a number of reasons, but one, because it reminds us as fathers that preparing for the future means thinking beyond just an account balance, right? It's about thinking about your purpose and what that looks like, thinking about your relationship and what that looks like, thinking about your fatherhood and what that looks like, because your kids aren't going to need you the same way anymore. And so hopefully you've built them up and built your relationship up in a way that, kind of lasts forever, the way that you would enjoy it, or the way that you want it to, right? I think you do have to plan for your money. That's important. But you need to plan for your time. You need to plan for your health. You need to plan for your marriage. You need to plan for your relationships, your identity, your relationship with God, as you just mentioned, I think is an important part of all of that. And the goal is to reach retirement with your finances intact and the ability to step away and pay your bills, but then also to have your emotions and your relationships and the way that you feel about yourself and your identity intact and with some clarity as you step forward. I mentioned this just a minute ago, but Chris, if guys are wanting to reach out to you, to maybe, get a consultation or to say thank you or to give you a virtual high five or whatever the case may be, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to my website, vibrantretirement.com, and all of my contact information, social media and stuff will be there. And please reach out. I don't charge for, consultations and talk. It's really important to me that everybody gets the information that they need to make the choices that they, are going to want to make to have the most fulfilling life possible. So please don't be shy to reach out. No pressure or anything like that. And, love having conversations and just, helping people to either just talk it through and, hear a voice on the other end to just affirm and not judge, please reach out. Yeah. So that's the best way. vibrantretirement.com. Give me a call, shoot me a message, whatever it is you're comfortable with.
All right, cool. I'll make sure to also have that in the show notes. I know sometimes guys are listening to this while they're driving and maybe aren't writing down vibrantretirement.com, or, they may need to come back to it later. So I'll make sure I have your information and the website and the social media links available to them there as well. Listen, Chris, I appreciate it. I mentioned this pre-pod that I understand how important time is to all of us, but especially us as fathers, because the time is the one thing we're not going to get back, right? We can make more money, we can make new relationships, we can build new things, but we never get time back. So I appreciate you taking the time today to sit with us, to have this conversation, to talk about fatherhood, to talk about finance, to talk about, who we're becoming when we retire and not just what we're doing when we retire. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is a beautiful conversation. Thank you for the time.
Awesome. Chris, look, I'm not saying this for the pod. Thank you for what you're doing. You're changing the lives of men, setting them at ease as they get into retirement, making that as smooth as possible, because I know a lot of us have anxiety around it. I myself do. So thank you for joining us on the podcast, but also thank you for the work that you're doing. Totally appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rod. Likewise. I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.